It was supposed to be an ordinary day in the entertainment world. Cameras flashing, fans screaming, and Wang Yibo's radiant charm lighting up every stage he stepped on. But behind the glitz and glamour, behind the blinding spotlights that usually adored him, something far darker was brewing, a storm that no one saw coming. And now, the one voice crying out in the chaos isn't Wang Yibo's. It's his manager's, trembling, furious, and desperate for justice. The entertainment industry was rocked to its core when the tragic accident involving Wang Yibo made headlines. The world gasped, fans wept, and social media burned with wild speculations. But amidst the whirlwind of rumors, accusations, and chaos, one person stood in the eye of the storm. His longtime manager, the person who had been by Yibo's side through every rise and fall. And today, that same person is crying out, not for fame, not for pity, but for justice. When the accident first occurred, confusion filled every corner of the internet. Conflicting reports came out from anonymous sources. Some claimed it was reckless driving, others whispered about sabotage, and a few even accused the manager of negligence. But what no one knew then was that the truth was far more painful and far more shocking than any rumor dared to imagine. Wang Yibo's manager, whose name had always stayed out of the spotlight, finally broke his silence. In a teary, emotionally charged statement, he said, "People see the headlines, they see the blood, they see the broken car, but they don't see what led to it. They don't see the lies, the betrayal, and the people who tried to destroy everything we built." Those words sent chills through the entertainment world. Who were they? What betrayal was he talking about? And what really happened that fateful night? In the days that followed, witnesses came forward, and fragments of the story began to piece themselves together like shards of glass. According to several insiders, the manager had been pushing for a safer schedule for Yibo. After weeks of back-to-back shoots, late-night rehearsals, and high-pressure events, he wanted Yibo to take a break, just a few days off. But production executives disagreed. The show had to go on, and the profits were too high to pause. That night, after a particularly long shoot, the manager reportedly begged Yibo to rest. But commitments had been made, and the next location was hours away. Exhausted but determined, Yibo got into the car, his manager beside him. Minutes later, the world would hear the sound of screeching tires, shattering glass, and a silence that tore through millions of hearts. When the ambulance sirens faded and the crowd dispersed, the spotlight shifted, not toward Yibo's recovery, but toward blame. The same manager who had risked his own life that night found himself buried under accusations. Some labeled him careless, others called him manipulative, and a few even hinted that he had orchestrated the accident to gain sympathy. But the truth, as it often is, was buried deep under a pile of sensational headlines. One evening, after weeks of silence, a video leaked online. It showed the manager outside the hospital, eyes red, voice trembling as he whispered to a fan, "I never left his side. I didn't sleep for days. I begged them not to overwork him. I warned them, but no one listened. And now, they want to make me the villain." The clip spread like wildfire. Hashtags like #JusticeForTheManager and #TruthBehindTheAccident began trending across platforms. Fans rallied behind him, demanding an investigation into the people and companies that had ignored safety warnings. Inside the hospital, the atmosphere was thick with emotion. Wang Yibo was fighting his way to recovery, unaware of the storm outside. His team was fractured, some members distancing themselves from the manager to protect their own careers, others secretly leaking information to journalists. The manager, once respected and trusted, was now treated like an outsider. There were nights he sat alone in the hospital corridor, his hands trembling as he replayed the events of that night over and over again. The sound of metal crunching, the smell of burning tires, Yibo's faint voice calling his name. He could still hear it, haunting, echoing, impossible to forget. One night, a nurse found him slumped in a chair, tears falling silently as he whispered, "He trusted me. I should have done more." But as days turned into weeks, guilt transformed into determination. The manager began gathering evidence, messages, call logs, emails, anything that could expose the truth. He wasn't going to let greed and corruption bury Wang Yibo's pain under entertainment industry politics. He was going to fight. Soon, a shocking discovery emerged. There were reports of faulty car parts, unapproved modifications done to the vehicle without proper inspection, and shady financial connections between the transport company and certain entertainment executives. It wasn't just an accident. It was negligence, fueled by greed and hidden behind glamour. When the manager went public with the findings, chaos erupted. Reporters flooded the streets, fans protested outside corporate offices, and the entertainment company's stock plummeted overnight. What was once seen as a tragic mishap was now shaping up to be a full-blown scandal, one that could shake the entire industry to its core. In a tearful press conference, Wang Yibo's manager finally let it all out. "I've been called a liar, a criminal, even a murderer. But all I ever wanted was to protect Yibo. He's not just a star, his family. And if speaking the truth means losing everything, then so be it. I will cry, I will scream, I will fight, because justice must be served." The audience was silent. Cameras clicked, journalists exchanged stunned glances, and even the most cynical critics found themselves speechless. It wasn't just a statement. It was a raw confession of loyalty, pain, and love. As the investigation deepened, more truths came out. Internal emails showing the pressure to keep Yibo on schedule no matter the cost, safety reports ignored for months, and decisions made purely for financial gain. Each revelation painted a clearer picture of a system that had pushed its star beyond his limits, until the inevitable happened. And through it all, the manager remained at the center, bruised, exhausted, but unbroken. Fans began sending messages of support. Flowers filled his office again, and the internet shifted from blame to sympathy. He became a symbol, not of scandal, but of courage. Weeks later, when Wang Yibo finally appeared in public again, the first thing he did was hug his manager. Cameras captured the moment, raw, unfiltered, emotional. In that single embrace, 1,000 unspoken words passed between them. Gratitude, forgiveness, and unbreakable trust. The crowd erupted in tears and applause as Yibo whispered into the microphone. "He stood by me when no one else did. Don't believe the lies. Believe the truth." That single sentence changed everything. The storm began to fade. The truth finally began to shine, and justice, slowly but surely, found its way through the cracks. Today, the entertainment world still talks about that moment. The day when a manager's tears turned into a movement. His cry for justice was more than just a defense. It was a message to everyone who hides behind fame and fortune. It was a reminder that behind every celebrity's smile, there's a human being, and someone fighting fiercely to protect them. And though the road ahead remains uncertain, one thing is clear. This was not the end, but a new beginning, not just for Wang Yibo, but for an entire industry that finally had to face the truth. The world had already seen the headlines. Wang Yibo in critical condition, manager under fire, entertainment company denies negligence. But what the world hadn't seen was the storm that brewed behind those glossy news articles. The sleepless nights, the heartbreak, and the tears of a man who had dedicated his entire life to protecting one of Asia's brightest stars. When Wang Yibo's manager stepped out of the hospital that morning, the air was heavy with grief and disbelief. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, and questions flew like bullets. Yet, in the middle of the chaos, his voice trembled as he whispered words that silenced everyone around him. "You all talk about the accident, but no one talks about what caused it. You write headlines about pain, but none of you care about the truth." His eyes were swollen from crying. His voice cracked with emotion. That was the first time the world saw the man behind the curtain, not as a manager, not as an employee, but as a human being shattered by guilt and desperation. That evening, a video surfaced online. It showed him sitting alone in a quiet hospital hallway, still in his rumpled clothes from the night of the crash. His hands trembled as he scrolled through his phone, reading thousands of messages, some filled with hate, some with pity, but none that truly understood. The flickering fluorescent lights above him cast a pale glow on his face as he whispered, barely audible. "I was there when he screamed. I held his hand when he couldn't move. I called for help, They didn't come fast enough. The pain in his voice pierced through every heart that listened. Fans who had once accused him of negligence suddenly found themselves questioning everything. What really happened that night? The truth began to unravel slowly. Behind the polished image of showbiz perfection lay a world full of pressure, greed, and silence. Wang Yibo's manager had been begging the production team for weeks to give Yibo a rest, to let him recover from exhaustion. But the response was always the same. "He's our golden boy. He can't stop now." And so, the schedule continued. Endless rehearsals, late-night shoots, and cross-country travels with barely enough time to breathe. Until that one night, when the fatigue caught up and tragedy struck. The manager later revealed through tears that he had personally driven Yibo that evening because he didn't trust the company's driver. He was too tired, he said, voice trembling during a private interview. "I told him to sleep." He smiled and said, "You worry too much, G." Seconds later, the crash. Days after the incident, the manager refused to leave the hospital. He slept in chairs, barely ate, and refused every offer of an official statement. But when he saw the media turning the story into a spectacle, accusing him of being reckless, he snapped. One witness described seeing him burst into tears in the hospital lobby, shouting, "You want someone to blame? Blame me if it makes you feel better. But don't lie about what happened. Don't twist the truth for views." The rawness of that outburst became the moment fans started to realize the depth of his pain. It wasn't the cry of a guilty man. It was a cry of someone who had watched his world crumble before his eyes. Weeks passed, and still, the manager refused to go silent. He started collecting every piece of evidence: text messages from production heads, emails about tight schedules, and warnings he had sent that were ignored. What he found shook even him. Internal messages suggesting executives were aware of the risks but chose to continue for the sake of profit. When this revelation hit the public, the entire entertainment industry trembled. Fans launched the campaign #JusticeForYibo, and within hours, it became the #1 trending topic across multiple platforms. A few days later, he appeared on live television for the first time since the accident. The studio was filled with journalists, lights glaring, cameras rolling. The host asked a simple question: "Why are you crying for justice now?" The manager took a deep breath. His hand shook slightly as he leaned toward the microphone and said, his voice breaking, "Because no one else will. They want this buried. They want us to move on, to smile for the cameras again. But I can't. Not when I still hear the crash in my dreams. Not when I still see him lying there, blood on his face, asking me if everything would be okay." A tear rolled down his cheek, and the room fell completely silent. Not a single camera dared to flash. "I failed to protect him once," he continued, "but I won't fail him again. Not in silence. Not in fear." His words spread across the internet like wildfire. People who had doubted him began to see the truth. Celebrities came forward in solidarity, whispering about the toxic schedules and hidden pressures that plagued the entertainment industry. Suddenly, Wang Yibo's accident wasn't just a personal tragedy. It became a mirror reflecting the dark side of fame. Inside the hospital, Wang Yibo was slowly recovering. Those who saw him said that when he heard about his manager's public breakdown, he cried quietly. "He doesn't deserve this," he reportedly said. "He saved me." And that's what many didn't know. In the chaos of the crash, it was his manager who shielded Yibo from the brunt of the impact. His quick reaction may have been the very thing that saved the superstar's life. A week later, the manager was seen visiting a small temple just outside the city. He lit a candle, knelt before the altar, and prayed silently for justice, not only for Yibo but for every artist silenced by fear. The wind was soft, the sky turning orange with sunset, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause with him. He whispered, "If truth is all I have left, then I'll fight with it until my last breath." That line was later quoted by thousands online, becoming a symbol of resilience and loyalty. In the end, the investigation confirmed that negligence from the production company contributed to the accident. Charges were filed, and public apologies were issued. But for Yibo's manager, the real victory wasn't in court. It was in truth finally being seen. When Wang Yibo appeared again months later, standing on stage beside his manager. The applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed, and Yibo turned to him with a grateful smile. Into the microphone, he said softly, "He cried for justice because he believed in truth. And because of him, I'm standing here today." The crowd erupted, not just in cheers, but in emotion. It wasn't just a reunion, it was redemption. And as the lights dimmed, fans across the world realized something powerful. Behind every superstar is someone fighting battles the public may never see. And sometimes, those battles are fought with tears, tears that demand justice, not sympathy. Sparkles, if you were moved by this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more emotional and powerful updates on Wang Yibo's journey and the unseen truths behind the spotlight. Your support helps keep these stories alive and ensures their voices are never silenced.